Hello there, sword friends. Today is going to be a question and answer video. Some of you submitted questions. Well, you didn't exactly submit them. I solicited them. I said, hey, I am going to not have anything planned. Would you like me to answer questions? And some of you responded with questions that I can answer, and thus this video. So if you're not interested in hearing me ramble on about other people's questions, then I suppose this is not the video for you. But if you are interested in some good ramble time, I guess here we go. So first question. Sword friend Anthony asks, what is your favorite katana that you've owned up to now? Used to be Hanwei Bamboo Mat, or top 3. Okay. Well, the Hanwei Bamboo Mat is still my favorite, mostly for sentimental reasons, but I still actually like the way it moves around and stuff. The other ones that come to mind are the Rick Barrett 1075 and the KC29, but realistically, my favorite or my top 3 is something like the Academy Awards, where each category, depending on context, would have its own favorites and own worthy mentions. So if I can think of, like in terms of art swords, I really like the Josiah Boomershine Rick Barrett companion art piece that was made. It could have been done with a better polish because I didn't pay to have a really good one done, but that sword was amazing, and particularly to my style, it was filled with swirly mitsudomes, it had folded steel, it was a big wide beefy blade. It was amazing, but I sold it. The other things that come to mind, if you're looking for like a really budget cutter, what's my favorite would be the Practical XL, at least if you're talking about budget cutters for Tamashigiri cutting tatami mats. I don't know that I'm really qualified to say what is better for each individual particular art, but if you are cutting tatami mats, the Practical XL at under $200 seems like a pretty worthy sword to do that specific task. If you have a higher budget and you're training in Tamashigiri, then the Evolution blades. The LMC that I tested was amazing, and they make a myriad of other swords that are also really, really good. Budget smashing swords, I've tested the hell out of a number of Ronin Dojo Pros. They come with, some people like them, some people don't. To me, they've always lasted. They've lasted to do a lot of budget smashy related things. The Hanwei Raptors are another piece that get a lot of accolades. I've never really pushed one of those to the limit, but I have done some stupid things and they have survived it. But other people have done them, and those seem to get a lot of accolades too. So if you're looking for a budget smashy blade, those are good. Other people use them for training and such as well, but those seem to be durable, inexpensive blades. Obviously, I've reviewed a lot of different blades, but which ones are my favorite? Which ones do I like? All starts to kind of come down to context. That's real important if you want to get into the thick of it. Follow-up question from sword friend Anthony. Do you like modern made katanas or antique nihontos? Well, I like both. It's like saying, do you like coffee or beer? Or I don't know that that's actually a great analogy, but I do like them both depending on context. For usage, as in cutting things, I prefer to use modern blades. It feels safer, and I don't feel like I'm diminishing a historical piece that might have some value in time to future generations for whatever posterity's sake there might be. But more than that, I don't like to diminish the value of antique blades, and I don't use them for abusive, cutty type things. Not to say you couldn't, not to say there wouldn't be an antique blade I wouldn't use. And that's also not true. I've used antique World War II blades. But I digress. The point is, for EI, I don't mind using an antique if it's mounted properly for usage. It gives me some sort of historical tie, and I can certainly enjoy that. Generally speaking, though, I use modern blades to whack things. I prefer to use modern blades. They're more resilient and more forgiving of my poor technique. So as I'm learning, as I'm getting better, I feel like that's a better tool for that particular end. If you're a user, in most contexts, it would be difficult for me to think of why you would want to use an antique piece other than some historical tie to study an art, but I don't know, to each their own. Do I like Nihonto for art, for aesthetic, for history? Yeah, I certainly like them, but they're just two different sides to the same coin. They're both swords. I can like them both equally. I just like them for different reasons. More question from sword friend Anthony. Do you own some antiques? Never seen one in your vids. Yes, I do have some antiques. I have some antique katana. I have some antique various this and that's, antique Compulon, antique Tulwar. I have a myriad of antiques. The sword ramblings that you see in the video is a little bit more extensive than just the background. But yes, I do have antiques. I just don't really have a lot to share. The main purpose of the videos that I make is to hopefully help you decide on how to spend your money. And as an antique, I don't know that I'm really qualified to do that or help you, or if I did, it would only be for that one particular blade. Antiques are very unique and individual. Not always, but at least what I would have to share would be. So I don't think that it would be very I don't think I have as much to contribute to the conversation with the time I have to create videos. Most of what I can see doing is running the paces through a more modern blade and giving my thoughts, which I think that content is largely doesn't exist. At least there's not a myriad of it, and so more opinions are good. Antique blades, people that collect antiques seem to know their way around or study or learn, and they each enter it for their own reasons, and I just don't know that I would have as much to contribute to the conversation. At some point, I might do a comparison between an antique blade and a modern blade, but it would be that, I don't know. There's a lot of context that's involved in that conversation, suffice to say. But yes, I do own antiques. I don't talk about them very much because I don't think it's very valuable for me to do so. But if you want me to talk on them more, I will be happy to. Sword Friend Anthony had one more. What is the best, safest way to sharpen the edge for beginners without damaging a sword? I don't think there is one shy of sending it to a professional, which can often cost quite a substantial amount of money. I did send a sword to Nihonzashi once for the full polish. It was like $600. It came out shiny. It wasn't an art polish, but it wasn't advertised as that. Josiah Boomershine can often polish a sword for, I don't know, like 30, 40, 50 bucks an inch. It depends on the sword and what he quotes you and how much damage, but call it $1,000, $1,500 to polish and sharpen a sword. And that's the way you can do it without damaging it exactly or preserving some of the artisanal qualities of a sword. To sharpen it in general, I don't know of a way to do that without scratching it, marring it, or degrading its aesthetic value in some way, shape, or form. So to sharpen in general, I've used some ceramic cylinders to kind of hone an edge before. I've had minimal success maintaining an edge with that, but sometimes for the first couple cuts it helps out. I've also got a 1x30-inch belt sander from Harbor Freight. That was about $50, and then I spent $30 on belts on Amazon, and maybe $40 on belts, because I got some that were 1,000 grit and then a strop and some jeweler's rouge to really hone an edge. And I've had some success in sharpening kitchen knives with that, but it's tough for me to get a good edge on a sword. You can see me trying that on the latest Dark Sword Armory review that I did. I did a initial sharpening, and it made very little difference. And then I tried again with much better success, got it very sharp, but there was certainly some detriment to the aesthetic quality of the edge. So in short, I don't know. I don't have any experience really sharpening without degrading the edge. There are people that do. It seems like most of the sharpening tutorials out there include some sort of secondary bevel and don't preserve the initial or original geometry of the blade. If all of that's important to you, the only answer I have is money and a professional. Sword Friend Vedrinas, hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Removing stains after cutting fruits or vegetables. So fruits or vegetables contain acids that can etch a blade. And I know what you mean. Honestly, I take Mother's Meg or Flints or some mild metal polish, and I apply that to the blade and do a light coating. And I try to go all over the blade so that it evenly coats, and I'm evenly removing any etch that may be existing on there, and I have minimal success with it. Honestly, a lot of the stains from fruits or vegetables, or even if I run it under my tap, I have a softener, so there's some salt in the water that I have in my house. If I even run that under there for a prolonged period of time, it begins to rust, and those stains stay in the right light. If you're really particular about it, I don't really have an example or a fix for you other than send it to a professional to have it repolished, which can be more expensive often than the blade is worth. But Mother's Mag will usually get or remove some of the darker stains and at least get it to shinier and maybe more aesthetically pleasing than it is in its current etched or something like that state. Sword Friend Alex asks, I would really like to know what are your favorite and most awesome things you've experienced as a content creator, and also your favorite aspects of the process and interactions with people and YouTube. Long way of saying what like, what not like. Okay, so my favorite part of making videos, what do I like about it the most? Well, honestly, it's the opportunities that I've had to do sword-related things that I wouldn't have otherwise had just as a collector or silent person involved in the community. Making videos is sometimes thankless, but at the same time, if you really think about it, I've gotten to meet a lot of swordsmiths. I've gotten to take tours, and some sword friends have sent me their own swords to review and handle, and I've just gotten to experience a lot more things. Making video, making content, pushes me to learn more, and in the process of learning more, I've met some people that have given me amazing opportunities to do just that, to learn more and to share it. So by sharing, I have been rewarded with the opportunity to learn and see more things than I really would have otherwise. So that is, I think, my favorite part. Just the knowledge that I've gained through making videos has been great. Now, sometimes it comes in the form of correction, sometimes it comes in the form of harsh criticism, but realistically, I've learned a lot through the process of making videos, and it's been very rewarding for me personally. Also, I don't want to undersell what it means when somebody says thank you, you've helped me, and I don't know in what context that always is. Sometimes it's I've saved some money, sometimes I've directed them to the right sword, sometimes it's something else. And in any case, the initial purpose of me making these videos was to help people. I've certainly got some personal rewards from it myself, but the fact that I'm achieving the goal, which I set out to do, which was to help, is also certainly very rewarding. There are some downsides certainly as well. Those are some of the not like things. There are people that are unkind, but in general, I would say the community that follows me, watches the video, or at least responds to me is overall very positive. I try to assume positive intent. Sometimes that doesn't come through in the key when you type something out. Sometimes somebody can be very short and it seems critical. I try to assume positivity, and that's certainly helped me be more comfortable with some of the criticism that I've received. But honestly, I'm glad people are critical, because I've learned a lot through that as well. The downsides, what not like, video editing is a struggle for me. I have an idea of what I want to make, and often done is better than perfect, and balancing that is tricky. I'm sure every person that makes videos is the same thing. Also, listen to my stupid voice when I video edit. It's not just that it's long, but like listening to myself talk is still painful. It's gotten, maybe I'm a little more numb to it, but it's still not a fun thing. I imagine a lot of people, when they watch themselves on video, are immediately kind of stop there. But it's not, I guess I've gotten used to it, but it's still not fun. Swordfriend Borealis Axis asks, what is the sword purchase that disappointed you the most? Conversely, which surprised you the most? Meaning, you ended up liking the piece much more than you thought you would. So the sword that disappointed me the most, there's been plenty of them. The one that comes to mind the most, though, is probably the Hanwei Praying Mantis. That sword was one of the instigators for me making a channel. That was one of the first mass production swords worth any amount of money that I really purchased, and it was not to my liking, to say the least. I tried to research it, and from what I had read, nothing really prepared me to hold that sword and feel what I felt when I had forked over my money and then had it in my hand. And that's not a criticism of the sword exactly, as much as it is my expectations of the sword and what was delivered to me in the end. There were some good things from that sword. I polished the Subarong. It was Roku showed in a way that wore off when I tried to clean it. It came with some grease on it. When I tried to clean the grease, I took away the kind of some of the patina or the Roku show look. Conway was good with their customer service in that regard, or CAS was. They took the sword and replaced the Suba for me, and that was nice. But realistically, the sword was kind of a dunce in the hand. I didn't really like the feeling of it. It was big and heavy, and I didn't care for it in the end. And that made me think, hey, I really tried to find information about this sword before I bought it, and I didn't. So what could I do to aid in providing some of that information? Because when I went to go seek it, it was not there. And so hopefully the videos that I make could at least provide one opinion, informed or not, that would help people. That's why I try to include dynamics and measurements and stuff like that, so people could make a better decision. Or, me in my shoes years ago would not have bought that Praying Mantis. I don't know, maybe I still would have. I was kind of a dunce. Anyway, well, I still am. Other swords that come to mind, the Chinese SGC. I thought that would be more fun in the hand than it was. It's been a while since I've had one, but I recall being pretty disappointed when I got that one. It was second hand though, so that's worth noting. The first Albion Cressy that I got, it had been kind of I don't know, it's like one of those movies that gets all the hype around it, and then you go watch it and you're kind of disappointed, even though it's just it is what everyone else saw. The Cressy, the first one that I got, was kind of a disappointment. I actually have another Cressy up on my wall right now, and I like that one a lot more, and I don't know if it feels the same. I don't know if I took measurements from that sword when I got it, but the first Cressy that I got was actually a pretty big disappointment to me, as well as the Arms and Armor Henry V. Again, a big Type 14 sword that I really like the look of, but when I got it, it was so heavy in the hand, and it kind of hurt when I swung it. The wheel pommel didn't feel good. Now, admittedly, I don't study historic European martial arts. I don't know how to swing it. Maybe I was holding it wrong. Maybe it's just my big dumb sausage hands. Maybe it's that it's too close to history and people's hands were a little smaller. I don't know. But that one also stood out. And none of those are really critiques of the sword, just as I would say it all lines up with what I thought the sword would be versus what it was in actuality, and I'll attribute that to a lot of lack of information on my part or lack of information available kind of in the ether. Conversely, what surprised me, what was good, the Minatoshi Tessen is one that stands out a lot. I remember the first time I held that sword, which isn't one that I think they offer anymore. It was like 300 something bucks, but it was folded and differentially heat treated and had all these. It was a very feature-rich sword, to say the least. It also felt really good and was sharp, and it was kind of a green leprechaun-looking thing. But for what it was, it really impressed me. The KC-29, I didn't expect much from that sword, but that one felt really good. I have a John Ledemo St. Catherine piece. I haven't had, that was my first experience with a piece from John Ledemo, and, well, not my first, but my first European sword, I should say. And it's amazing in the hand, and that really surprised me. It made me understand why people kind of pay out the wazoo for his work. It feels impeccable in the hand. The Skadro Kumo was another one that stood out, and all of these, I think, the 25th anniversary Shinto as well, all of these kind of have a trend in that dynamically they impress me. Like, you could see a picture and kind of get a good idea for what to expect, but until you hold a sword in your hand, you don't really know it. And so holding those in the hand, they felt really good, and that I suppose those are things that impress me. Swordfriend Shane asks, other than buying swords and reviewing them for YouTube, I was wondering if you had any other hobbies or interests that you would be willing to talk to us about. Thanks for your videos and keep up the good work. Okay, yes, I do have other hobbies and interests. I play video games a lot. I'm a big dork. My daughter's over there playing Stardew Valley right now, rocking it out, using up my Steam account. Parenting, I suppose. I don't know if that's a hobby, but video games, certainly one. I do that. I usually play isometric RPGs. I'm very excited for Baldur's Gate 3 to come out. I like 4X games like Civilization, Europa Universals, something. I've been trying to do that. Crusader Kings was too complicated for me. I've also been playing a little bit of Apex Legends. I'm not usually an FPS guy, but that has sucked me in recently. Rocket League, I try not to suck at that, though my friends would tell you that I'm doing a terrible job at that. But those, yeah, I play video games, usually PC. I have a PlayStation, but I haven't turned it on to play video games for quite a while. Obviously, martial arts stuff, I do that. I also study Filipino martial arts, but I've been a very poor student for the last couple of years and really haven't been very active, and I've been lapsing on my home training as well. What else? I used to make beer. I don't do it as much. It's still a passion. I just don't stop drinking it because it's very calorie rich, and I'm trying not to do that. But I did make beer for quite a while, and I was interested, and that's a fun thing. Photography. I take pictures. I'm interested in cameras, techie stuff, gear, home theater, audiophile-y stuff, listening to speakers. I like all of that gadgetry, home projects, remodeling. I did most of my house stuff myself and fixing things, and not that I'm predisposed to it, but I've learned quite a lot and done that. Traveling and the like, and that kind of stuff. So I will try to overlay some images, hopefully while I've been talking, if I did my editing right, that show you some of the random shenanigans about the things that I've done. I've taken a lot of pictures, I've done some traveling. Hopefully the random myriad of things that I've overlaid have conveyed that. Anyway, yes, I do have other hobbies. I don't talk about them much because it seems like the other hobbies that I have are also things that a myriad of other people enjoy and love, and other people do a better job of sharing, explaining, and furthering the conversation on those topics. So I generally don't ramble on much about it because I'm just a person that enjoys them, and I don't know that I can contribute as much. Being a weirdo with as many swords as I have and spending as much time with them as I do is a little bit more on the obscure, unique side, and I can probably help more in that category. So that's why the channel is so focused on that. Obviously, I'm very interested in them, but yes, I do have other interests. Swordfin Joey asks, how close do modern katanas come to antiques? As a Japanese martial arts student, what are your views on HEMA? Are there any qualities in katana you prefer over European or other swords, or the other way around. So first part, how close do modern katanas come to antiques? That's a loaded question, and I could ramble on about it for an hour. I think of modern katanas. You have mass production, you have custom swords, you have this giant swath of things with different dynamics and measurements and quality levels, and then you have really the same swath of antiques over here. And honestly, I think there can be a lot of overlap. It's certainly possible you have a modern sword that is similar to an antique at some point, both in quality level and dynamics and all things, or you might have something on opposite ends of either sphere that are wildly different in quality level and dynamics and proportion and overall similarity. But I think it's certainly possible you get something very similar. I have a Rick Barrett sword that he made from old Japanese swords, and proportionally it feels very Japanese. It looks very Japanese. It's mounted in a modern piece and a little more bedazzled or different than you might find from an antique Japanese sword. But proportionally it looks very Japanese. So at least to me. Yeah, I think it's possible to get a modern sword that looks like an antique or feels like one, but it's also possible not to. What are my thoughts as a Japanese student of HEMA? I like swords. I wish I had time to study HEMA. I wish I was also a student of HEMA. I just can't fit it into life right now. But aside from other excuses, I don't have really any bad opinion or good opinion about HEMA, other than I wish I could play too. There's a lot of similarities between the two, and so as I try to watch people who study HEMA over Japanese arts, it seems like there's a lot of similarities between how you swing a sword at another person between the two camps. That said, I don't know. I wish that when I do kind of pairs in Kenjutsu, I really like how HEMA practitioners are sparring in a sense. I use a wooden bokken and I do paired drills, but I think there's value in that, and I don't generally get to participate in it. So I think that part of HEMA is very exciting to me, and one of the draws is the sparring component. Last part of the question, are there any qualities in katana that you prefer over European or other swords? So not really. I mean, I like all the swords. It seems like if you really find fine example of European swords or fine examples of Japanese swords, they're very detailed and elaborate and obviously show different things. The European stuff, even at its best, seems like it could be a little rougher, but I think you can find examples of antique pieces in either camp that are absolutely wild and great and highlight the capability of craftsmen in their time. I don't know, something about the Japanese aesthetic, but I don't get too caught up in the debate over which one's better or worse. They're all kind of products of their time and their culture, and I just try to appreciate them for what they are. But are there qualities dynamically? Or no, not really. I can't say that I appreciate one over the other. Just have more experience using one than the other, so that's what I tend to share. Swordfriend Robert, hi Matthew. I've been seeing some modern bladesmiths make Japanese-style swords in the Western tradition, both in the use of recognized Western forging techniques and the result final hybridization construction. Example, swords possessing European attributes but displaying traditional Japanese shapes. What's your take on the hypothetical scenario of a modern swordsmith manufacturing a historically European-inspired sword that possesses many of the distinguishing features of a Japanese sword, both in the fabrication process and in the ultimate end product? I don't think this kind of converse hybridization has ever been done before. Oh, maybe I didn't read that right. I don't understand the question. Sword possessing European attributes but displaying traditional Japanese shape. What's your take on the hypothetical scenario of a modern swordsmith manufacturing a historically inspired European sword, so it probably looks like a European sword, that possesses many of the distinguishing features of a Japanese sword, both in fabrication process and the ultimate end product? So I would assume that means a folded, differentially hardened sword made from a similar process to Tamahagane, so it would display a hada and but look more like a European sword. So there's Japanese ken, which have a more European-esque kind of double-edged straight sword looking thing, and I think they might give you some idea of what it would look like. I don't know that there have been folded, differentially hardened European swords. I imagine there have been. The process of making that type of steel was likely available earlier to the European side. Anyway, it wouldn't surprise me if something like that does exist, though I can't really think of an example. It sounds like it'd be a cool sword, but I don't know that it would be terribly forgiving European swords. I don't know. It seems like a cool idea. I'd like to see it. I have no objection. I know some people get really caught up in the history of making things in a traditional way. I don't really subscribe to that theory myself, or I don't harp on it too much. If a modern smith wanted to make something cool like that, I would love to see it. I suppose that's my thought. If I didn't answer your question because I read it wrong, by the way, throw it down below and I'll try to more deliberately answer it. Sword Friend Rain asks, I just want another Highlander sword review. Well, I think there's one over yonder back here somewhere. I just haven't done one because you can't buy it. The one I did from Point Gallery, at least there's something similar available today, and it gives you an idea of what to expect. But the Highlander sword that I have over yonder is from Zeist Armory, and I guess they have closed shop, and you can't buy it. So I could show it to you, but it's not one that you can buy. So maybe in a future time I will make an obscure video about that. It's the Katana sword, and it's a folded mass production kind of Chinese sword, but it looks really pretty and it's cool, and I put a red scabbard on it, and I like it. That was the movie that kind of drew me into the Japanese sword. I really, as many, I'm sure. I can tell you from a review standpoint, the handle is not cool. The one on the Connor sword that I have is actually very elaborate, and you can make out a lot of the details. And the Duncan sword that I reviewed from Point Gallery, the features were somewhat muddy, and I would describe the handle as uncomfortable. This handle, the details are very sharp. It's made out of a rubbery substance that's coated around the tang or the Nikago, and it's murder on the hands. It's wildly uncomfortable to hold in general, to swing at something. The handle is objectively as uncomfortable as the other one was from the Duncan, as in how it hits your hand and how you hold it, but the details, the crispness of all of the characters on the Nikago are wildly uncomfortable when you swing it. Might as well be made of thumbtacks. It's just not very fun. Anyway, maybe I'll share something. If you want to see a review on a sword that can't really buy, but I can show it to you, sure. Swordfriend Tim asks, hi, I'd like to know if you own some antique swords, and if yes, which? I would also be interested in to hear about your opinion on the Albion Sheriff and Sovereign Sovereign swords. Your opinion concerning these swords. I'm quite infatuated with the Albion Type 14. Me too. So I think I covered a little bit about the antiques already. I do own Japanese sword antiques. I have a couple Tanto, Wakizashi, Katana from the Japanese antique variety. I also have some antique Tulwar. I have an antique Tiv, Archer's Dagger, somewhere around. I don't have any medieval European antiques specifically, but I do have antique pieces around, antique Suba, antique furniture, antique sword components, antique Compilon. I have a number of antique pieces around, and I enjoy them, and they're fun to study. Antique Katana, I think, are easier to come by. They've just been preserved better. There's been more intention around saving them and preserving them as historical objects of some, reverence or importance, and so they're easier to find. A kind of bona fide, really nice antique piece for a little bit less money than some of the others. So I tend to find Japanese a little bit easier to come by, and so that's where most of my antique collection stems. Okay, if you have questions about any of the antiques, I'd be happy to show them to you. I did make some videos about the Compilon some time ago, but it was with a camera that was not as great at video as the ones I have now, so maybe it's worth revisiting. I do still have the antique Tulwar, and 2 of the Compilon that I made in videos a long time ago. They've been up for sale for a long time, but I put them at a price that most people wouldn't want to pay because I like having them around. They're very cool old swords. I've thought about remounting some of the Compilon, but I don't know. Anyway, if you want to see more about the antiques, let me know, and maybe I can post some video stuff. As for opinions on the Sovereign and the Sheriff, well, I, for a long time, really wanted an Albion Sovereign, and now I have one, and so that was really it. The Sheriff I came by before I got the Sovereign. I don't think I would have bought the Sheriff if I already owned the Sovereign, but I had an opportunity to get a Sovereign, and then later did. The Sheriff was kind of a holdover to see if I liked the Type 14. Turns out I do. I have tried cutting with the Sheriff, not the Sovereign, and didn't have a lot of luck. It was not easy to cut with, whether it be my technique or also the fact that it's not terribly sharp. Either one of those, but they feel really good in the hand. Honestly, I recall having in Arms and Armor Henry V sword, which is a Type 14 similar, but is much heavier, and I recall it being less comfortable to move around. The Albions seem a little nicer, but that also might be that I have just learned how to move a sword a little better. So comfort-wise, they feel really good. I really, really like the way the Albion Sovereign looks, though. The double fullers, the kind of way the guard works. The one I have as a brass pommel, I'm less a fan of that personally, but that was the used variety that I had a chance to get. But I really like the way the Sovereign looks. It reminds me of the sword from Sword in the Stone, which is a movie I watched a lot as a kid and have fond memories of, even though that sword kind of looks a little weird now. It's a little bigger, a little different. Still, it reminded me of that. I really like the Albion Sovereign. It's an aesthetic thing, though. I don't really take them off the wall very much. I should make a video at some point comparing the dynamics between the two, or at least measuring the two so that you can compare the dynamics. I'll try to get to that at some point in the not too terribly distant future, since they're just up there and I just have to get off my lazy ass and do that. Alright, that's all the questions that I have. If you have any other questions, well, actually, if this video was interesting, I haven't done something like this before, and I don't know if it will be good or bad, but if you liked this video, then let me know. Throw comments if you want me to do another video like this. Throw your next questions in the comment section for this one, and I will, if there's enough of them, or they're different ones, or if it's worthwhile, then I'll do another video like this at some point and answer the questions in the comment section from this video related to sword stuff. Anyway, that's all I've got. Hopefully the video's been entertaining. As always, cheers, and thanks for watching.